Dice are rolling, darkness falls. Inside the GM Studios halls. Tabletop games where nightmares creep. In a realm where sanity is lost and weak. Welcome to the abyss where dreams shatter. Inside the GM studio, nothing else matters. Blood and chaos, the dark arts unfold. In the realm of role-playing, where legends are told.
Hello out there in Electric Internet land. Welcome to the Side Question episode of Inside the GM Studio, where we host questions from the internet, usually Reddit, and on the roll of a die. And so I am your host, David.
I'm Matt.
And I'm going to do that on the roll of a die here. Ooh, got the good clicky clack on the concrete table. All right, 9. I get a 9 this week.
Okay.
9.
This one comes from Broken End Millock on our Ask Game Masters with the title, "Is it bad practice to ambush a player's camp when they are asleep?" In parentheses, player agency question.
Mm-hmm.
I am running. I am running Daggerheart right now, a homebrew campaign based on the Drylands campaign frame. I've been hinting to my players that in the village they are in, a cabal of criminals have taken an interest in them and are trying to stalk them. They have not pursued any of them, and I intend on introducing this group as antagonists. Since they are not damaged and have set up camp outside of the village they were staying in, I wanted to stage an ambush from the group. I'm wondering if you had any input on how to stage this. There are NPC guards that are taking the first shift, and I was considering having them awake to these hold on, I want to make sure I get this. And I was considering having them awake to these guards in conflict with their pursuers. I do not want to railroad them into this scenario, and they absolutely do not have to clear all of the enemy PCs, as I am hoping they come up with a creative way to thwart them. I just feel like staging an ambush while they are asleep could be considered removing player agency. Trying to keep this general and not get into lower specifics, but would love your inputs.
Okay, so what are enemy PCs?
I don't know. That's why I always try to make sure that I try to read these things correctly.
Okay, so here's the thing: is it's this question, irrespective of the details, is getting at the heart of a thing that is becoming increasingly an anxiety, and even something that's misused, which is removing player agency. It seems as though it's becoming a prevalent notion that if you give anything to the players, that's a surprise, that's a plot twist, that the overall plot hinges on, let's say, in order to do X, you gotta do Y. In order to get A, you have to do B. That those contingencies are somehow removing player agency, when so many of them are just basic structure of the plot.
Yeah.
I hate to ruin it for you, but having a completely sandbox adventure that's just a bunch of murder hoboing is not a story. And it seems as though anytime somebody comes up against something that is a perfectly reasonable thing to do, given the contingencies of their campaign and given the players, the information that the players have, you haven't removed player agency because it sounds as though you have communicated to the group that their enemies abound and that this particular group has a grudge against them. So this isn't falling out of the fucking sky. And even if it were, stuff like that happens sometimes. Like, that's okay, right? I mean, what are random encounters? Random
Exactly.
encounters are
Yep.
removing player agency because they don't decide to engage with the boule. It's like, but they went out into the wilderness where there is a boule, and yeah, good storytelling would foreshadow that in some regard. Hey,
Well, hell,
man,
man.
you
Even here, they put it in this in the question that they're asking. They said that there are NPC guards. Sure, they're not the actual players that are taking the first shift. You know where that came from? Because back in the day, adventurers, they're just like, I'll take first shift, I'll take first watch to make sure we don't get ambushed.
yep, right. So obviously they acknowledge that it's a possibility.
Yeah.
Um, and if you never follow through on the possibility, under circumstances where it would be most appropriate, then why do the characters even need NPCs in the group? Why do they even need whatever? I mean, what I would do is, frankly, if the group of baddies has it out for the PCs, then they're likely to attack when the NPCs are doing watch. Because if
Yeah.
I don't know anything about the group generally, but I promise you the NPCs are less formidable than the player characters because otherwise they would be the main characters of the plot. So if smart bad guys would ambush when the NPCs are at watch, and no need to rule through it, just they show up, and just maybe you have maybe you do a couple rolls or something, but those NPCs could get dispatched with, they could get killed if the group of bad guys is overwhelmingly more talented and has the element of surprise and the cover of night. Then they absolutely probably could dispatch with those NPCs, and that wakes the PCs up, and now they have a fight on their hands, and they're not armored and they're not prepared. Or you could have it be like maybe the PCs wake up during that skirmish, and surprising your players with something is under rare circumstances removing player agency if you're not playing fair. You haven't armed them with any information that this is a potential thing, right? But I would posit that camping in the wilderness, first of all, why are they camping outside of a village that's safe? I mean, the whole point of a village is that it's safe. Why are they camping outside the village?
Yeah.
Like, that doesn't make any sense. But let's just assume they have a good reason to. That is always a scenario where the PCs ought to expect that there could be some danger. There's a reason that in old stories and in legends and D&D adventures, traveling by night isn't really a thing, right? Visibility is low, danger is high. A camp is always a spot that there could be some danger. If there isn't, then your world is not a threatening enough place. It isn't as though the PC opened a door, which is not, yeah, technically there's always a potential for a threat on the other side of a door, but not like in a camp. And
Right.
so if you didn't give the PC any information that if they opened this one particular door, a giant on the other side was going to squash them with a fucking club and kill them.
Yeah.
And then they open the door and you just said, yeah, you get roll a saving throw. You don't make the saving throw, you're dead. Like, that's not playing fair. But under other high danger circumstances, like, for instance, in a dungeon, you ought to expect when you open a door that there might be some danger on the other side of it. That's why smart players I go up to the door and I listen at it. I feel the handle, see if it's hot. I look through the keyhole, see if I can see anything. I get a waft of whatever scents are coming from the other side. Is there any light? I try to move, like they're smart about it. And because they just know that that's always potential danger. You don't need to announce the fact that there might be something dangerous on the other side of a door of a evil wizard's castle, right? Of course there is. Same thing goes for camping. So absolutely full stop 100% no. Even if you hadn't given them a warning that this particular faction was after them, but it sounds like you did. And so they should have known. And if you are subtextually communicating things to your players and they are choosing to ignore them as if there will be no consequences because player agency, then you need to consequence your players a little bit more.
Yeah.
or they're going to get uppity, and they will be a problem in your game. I promise you. Sorry, rant over.
Yeah, let's get to some comments here. Jerlyn says respecting player agency doesn't mean they don't have negative events happen. It means you allow them honest freedom to make choices. If they wake up captured and in chains without roles or a chance to do anything, that would be bad. But waking up to combat that they still have full freedom of choice to act as they wish, that is oh shit, I just lost it. But waking up to combat that they still have full freedom of choice to act as they wish is still giving them player agency.
Yeah, it's trying to think about, like, just because they're at a disadvantage doesn't mean they don't have agency. But it's better if you can go, what disadvantages are they facing in this particular scenario? And if they do face disadvantages, did they have a way to circumvent those disadvantages based on some sort of general information that you think they should have, or information that you explicitly gave them, or information that you at least hinted at that they probably could have deduced within reason? If it's in one of those three categories, then yes, you go, okay, you know that this group is after you. You know that camping outside of town is dangerous, more dangerous than staying in an inn. You obviously had the forethought to bring some NPCs along with you, and maybe they're not hirelings, maybe they're just NPC members. I don't know,
of the group. It's like guards.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of took it as that they're hirelings or something.
Yeah.
So obviously you're fully apprised of the stakes here, and that a consequence would happen is not in any way taking your ability to interact with the scenario away from you. Yeah, you might be disadvantaged, but that is just a way of communicating that you ought to have prepared for X, Y, and Z, right? Like, and most of these things are kind of, sometimes they can just be little character things. Characters sharpen their swords because they think that that's what they ought to do, because that's what you would do if you had a sword, is you would sharpen it and you would oil it. But if your GM kind of communicated to you that the sort of game he was running, that sort of attention to detail was important, and he's like, well, your sword is getting old and rusty, you know, and you're just like, oh, whatever, it's fine. Like, oh, it's not cutting as well, you've noticed, and you know, it's whatever. The salt in the air is like having a corrosive effect on it. You just keep going, whatever, whatever. And then it's like one day you fumble and your sword breaks. And it's like, well, what the hell are you doing? My sword breaks. It's like, I need my sword. It's like, yeah, but I do the maintenance. You should have been apprised of what the consequences were. That's a kind of a silly example that I don't think most DMs would do, but you know, some people like that kind of gritty realism with their games.
Another one here from Uria Thorne. I think you need to reconsider railroading and player agency. In my opinion, ambushes should absolutely be a thing that has the potential to occur. I wouldn't consider an ambush railroading. It's simply an event that happens. It's when you take away player options that player agency and railroading occurs. Ambushed at night by active highwaymen, roving monsters, and the such, is and should be a thing in games. Horses killed, tents ablaze, no rolls for the watchman, that's an issue. There's a big difference between turning down the hallway into a gelatinous cube and turning down a hallway into a gelatinous cube while the door behind you slams shut. Yeah. Yeah,
I'm kind of, I'm with it. You know, it's just, it you know, like the walls are closing in, and it's like, oh, like the walls are closing in, it's a trap. It's gonna crush you, and you're like, ceiling's closing in, walls are closing in. And you're like, is there any way out? No, well, no, you can't do that. That's an inevitable, right? It's
but
part of the reason that
you're not giving the game master answer though. Is there's nowhere to get out? Not that you can see.
Yeah, that's right. Well, you haven't looked. But if you know that there's no way out, then yeah, you've removed agency. If there is something inevitable that like look, some things are inevitable. Like if you have a well-structured plot, certain things are going to happen regardless of what the PCs do. But the presumption is that the PCs can affect the plot in a general way. Whenever you remove their ability to affect the plot, no matter what, then you're removing player agency. And frankly, I don't even necessarily know that it would always be bad. Yes, having them wake up in shackles where they never had a chance to like defend themselves or whatever, that would be kind of like that's kind of that is removing their agency.
Yeah.
But they're perfectly good narrative purposes that you might do that. And like for instance, just to take our game, did I give you guys an option as to whether you were like arrested at the beginning of this adventure and put in the gladiatorial arena?
No.
I totally removed your player agency there because I just thought it was cool and thematically appropriate. And I didn't think that you would mind because I don't abuse that power that much. And it created a cool scenario. We got to fight this cool monster that you did have full agency over whether you prevailed or you didn't. So the whole notion that anything that removes player agency is necessarily bad is just horseshit, first of all. And secondly, this isn't even a thing that falls into that category. So,
All right, so my take on the whole thing, in order to not take away agency, is pretty simple in still having fun with the game. If you have to, if it is these NPC guards that are waiting, go ahead and roll some sort of perception check for them. Go ahead and roll some dice real quick. We've done that. We've talked about this in episodes in the past, where you can just roll a die there. Whoever gets the bigger one, better. And then they've already taken off. They're one thing that they don't have to deal with. Now it gets into the party. You don't really have, there's nothing that they can do. If they attack them, they attack them. They're going to wake up. But I want you to know that there could be the scuffle between the guards and this group that could wake up everybody else. That's all it is. You just got to find out, give them the information, give them the options. And like we were saying all before, as soon as you just say set in stone that there's no way out of it, that's when you're taking away agency.
but here's the thing: is it's like I wouldn't even bother with the making a roll or whatever. The NPCs are guarding, and the PCs are asleep. So in this scenario, they have no agency. I'm not making a roll. You could be like, okay, here's how skilled the bad guys are, and
Right.
here's how skilled the NPCs are, and here's how much of a numbers advantage the bad guys have. It's a 2-to-1 advantage, and they have the cover of night and surprise. So that all quantifies into some sort of modifier. It quantifies into some sort of modifier, and then I do a roll, and I modify the roll based on the advantage that the bad guys have over the NPCs. And if I get a 10, then it's going to be all of the NPCs are dead, and it wakes up the PCs. If I get like a 15, then 2 of the 4 are dead. And then if I get like a 20, then it's like 1 is dead and 2 are wounded when the PCs wake up and they can
Right.
intervene. You
Yeah.
could do something like that, but I'm more inclined to just be like, I like this option best for narrative purposes. I think it's the most dramatic. The PCs are not in this fucking scene, and I'm just going to decide what happens. And I decide that 3 of the NPCs are going to be dead, and that PCs 1 and 2 that have the higher perception rolls or perception scores, they wake up first and join the fray, and then 1 round later, the other PCs wake up and join the fray, and a battle ensues. And here's the advantages that the bad guys get for getting the drop on the PCs, and they can't put their armor on or anything. They don't have time, and so the fight ensues. Get to the conflict as soon as possible, and decide the things narratively that are important. Yes, try not to do something cheap where it's like, oh, this NPC, maybe they're party members, right? Maybe they're not hirelings. They're members of the party. and one of the PCs has like a relationship with one of them, and maybe he's like romantically interested in one of them, and they have like this whole don't just kill that guy off
Yeah.
screen, right, or gal off screen. That is kind of cheap unless you want to do it for like a big emotional gut punch, but that's a missed opportunity because that relationship, if you're going to do something bad to one of the NPC, you're wasting an opportunity by having them die off screen. It's just it's not going to hit as hard. If you want to do that and be mean, have it have some meaning to the character and the plot in a way that is significant. Otherwise, like I'm just in the camp of like just decide what happens. Decide what happens when the PCs involve themselves. Allow them full reign as to what happens. But you should have a pretty good sense of what the appropriate scene that the PCs will come across when they get ambushed, and they should too. They should have a fair idea of like what was happening and what the stakes were. And it sounds as though the GM tried at least a little bit to give them an idea of what the stakes of the game were. So I wouldn't worry too much about it. Make some decisions, and stop fretting about whether your players are going to feel robbed. Because frankly, if you give them a high stakes dramatic scenario with stakes where they're ambushed and they need to fight for their lives and they have a great time doing that, they won't give a fuck if you took their agency away. They really won't.
I'm just much more of a fan of randomness. I like the chaos of randomness. And when it's something like this, when there's NPC cards, that could be a big help to the party when they wake up. Because if the ambushers aren't able to kill any of the guards, and the party wakes up, if there's 4 guards, that's 4 extra people they got on their team against this ambushing party. So I like the randomness of how many are gonna be taken out before the party wakes up.
Sure, but I agree with that. But that's more like a story that you're having with yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
Because the PCs don't know. Like they don't know, and they have no way of knowing. I have done this before. I have done the following scenario where I'm having a fight between PCs and a plot specific battle. And I don't track how many hit points or spell slots or whatever a particular bad guy has. The battle's just over when I decide that it's over. I don't do it a lot, but I have done it. Like,
sure.
What difference does it make? Like, random things, and I'm rolling random encounters behind the scenes, and yada yada yada. It's like, I just kind of think that all is just like, sure, it builds confidence if the players know that it's somewhat randomized, but what difference does it make really at the end of everything if you just decide a random encounter occurs and which random encounter occurs? Because I think we've all done that. You like roll on some table and you're like, oh, that doesn't seem appropriate.
Yeah.
Well, like, I'm just going to pick this one. It's like, well, you could just do that for most things. Just do the thing that seems the most dramatic. You're the arbiter of like what is the most tense and dramatic thing that could happen. And you should be striving toward that instead of just worshiping at the altar of randomness, because more often than not the PCs won't know whether it was randomized, and even if they did, if you could have just given them a better result, why wouldn't you?
Yeah. Oh, they'll know when they're in the Shire and you roll for a random encounter and a blue dragon shows up. That just doesn't make sense. But I think
Yeah,
that's
and
gonna
yeah.
I think that's gonna bring us to the end of this episode. Unless you got anything to add there, David? Nope, we'll go with that. So we will say nothing but a good night.
And good luck.